Hi everyone, welcome back to the Property Finance Podcast and continuing our series of frequently asked questions. I'm going to talk about what you can kind of get away with if you've got no money to put down. And there's a lot of social media nonsense that goes out there about no money down. And I think there needs to be some explanation to it, because I think it's very difficult when you're on a course and everything else and you hear no money down to think that you can just walk into any deal and just do something with no money. And I think realistically, that's incorrect. There's always going to be some money that has to be paid out somewhere. And I've sort of put this on social media a few times where I've said, there's no such thing as no money down. And then people come back and say, oh, well, what about if you're using other people's money? Well, to a degree, that's correct. Yes, you could use other people's money. But depending on what you're doing, there comes a point where, how do you securitize that money? So unless you've got someone who's willing to lend you 20 grand, for example, with no security to allow you to go through the legal process to purchase a property or to pay for stamp duty or valuations or quantity surveyors or anything like that, you're going to have to put your hand in your own pocket. And I think it's very rare to find an investor that's willing to invest in a speculative deal, because realistically, until you've exchanged on a property, completed on a property, it is a speculative deal. So I think it's very difficult to go out to an investor and go, oh, can you lend me £20,000 to pay for my legals, my valuations, my everything else, with the risk that that valuation then could come back lower. You're then left with a 20 grand loan that you can't do anything with because you've spent out on a valuation that's then come back lower. So it's very, very high risk. But I wanted to kind of touch on no money down because I've kind of put my own twist on it, I guess. And I'm sure I'd be able to sell a course on this if I wanted to, but I've sort of twisted it to no deposit down, because I think no deposit down deals do exist. There are deals out there that you can not put a deposit down on, but I think it's very difficult to do a no money down deal, because even if you're using other people's money, it's just impossible to find those investors, I think, that will give you money to pay for speculative valuations and things like that. So I think we kind of need to get rid of that. But doing deals with no deposit down is potentially possible, and we have done quite a number of those. So I guess the ones that we've used the most are things like buying below market value. So if you find a distressed vendor, for example, who's willing to knock 25, 30% off the market value of a property, that again could be financed with no deposit down, but you would need money for valuations, legals, etc. There's also title splitting. That's one that we've done a fair bit of. So taking a freehold block of flats and then essentially taking that block value, which is normally about 80% of what the properties are worth once split. What you do is you then go in, split those properties up, and I've done many a podcast on title splitting, so have a listen back about those. But what you would do is once you split the title, you then obviously finance against the split value as opposed to the block value. And again, that could reduce the deposit or potentially get rid of the deposit you need to put in. And then again, you've still got valuations, legals, obviously quite a bit of legal to pay for because you're splitting title and things as well. So again, it's not quite no money down, but it's no deposit down potentially. And then the last one that we've seen a lot of, and again, I've recorded a lot of podcasts around this because it's a very, very good strategy if you can find them, and that's deferred payments. And obviously I spoke through the example where we had a client who was purchasing a property for 2.3 million. We managed to get it so that they paid 1.3 million up front and then 1.15 million on the deferred. Obviously took it to 2.45 million in total, but they needed to pay interest on that bit that was deferred. But they had to pay 1.3 million day one. We managed to find a lender that put in 1.5 million day one. So not only was that a no deposit down deal, they actually got some money back for money that they'd spent out. So they'd spent money on legals, valuations, quantity surveyor fees, but then they got that back when the loan completed. So that kind of is a no money down, no deposit down. But the problem is they had to spend out the money first. So had that deal collapsed, they would have been 20, 30 grand in a hole. And obviously then it's not a no money down deal. So there are lots of different ways that you can do no deposit down deals. But yeah, I would say the biggest question we get asked is, can I do deals with no money down? And I think there has to be a setting of expectations that there is going to be something that you have to pay for. And if you are lucky enough to find an investor who's willing to put money in on an unsecured basis, or if you've got a credit card with a large amount that you can use on it, then yeah, okay, you could potentially do a no money down deal using other people's money. But I think there needs to be that expectation set that I think no money down just doesn't exist anymore. and no deposit down is kind of the new way of defining that no money down strategy. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully it gives you a few ideas of things you can do. Have a listen back to the podcast about below market value purchases, have a listen back at the podcast about title splitting, and have a listen back on the podcast around deferred payments, because all of those are really, really good strategies to get you in if you have limited funds available. So probably 3 of the best strategies that you can do for limited money down. So well worth having a listen back to those. But hopefully you found that helpful, and I'll catch you on the next one.